Hey, what's up? It's the Critical Plug, and I got for you an album review of the new Neurosis album, Undying Love for a Burning World. One of the most innovative bands in sludge metal, Neurosis, have returned after a decade-long hiatus after their excellent album, Fire Within Fires. But now having a new addition to the band, frontman of Isis and Sumac fame Aaron Turner, after the departure of founder and vocalist Scott Kelly, who had taken upon himself to depart from the band after his problematic behavior. And with this news, I would have thought the band would have called it quits. And after putting out a mostly strong and consistent discography, I wouldn't have thought that was a bad thing, as this band has put out numerous fantastic LPs, as they've taken on different styles, evolving with each one, truly creating a paradigm shift in sludge metal with atmospheric sludge metal, with incorporating other elements throughout their discography. Starting with Souls at Zero, with the incorporation of the oddities of avant-garde but the ferocity of post-hardcore, and then with Enemy of the Sun, with ambient soundscapes but yet tribal percussion, and then through Silver and Blood, where the band killed it once again while generating inclusions of post-industrial but also doom, and even bringing more variety on their 2001 release, A Sun That Never Sets, where the vocals would take on not only a more melodic approach, but more of a neo-folk approach that would show vocal similarities to that of Michael Gira of Swans, Tom Waits. And I say all that to say this due to the fact that all their influences, everything they've included in the past, I believe is coming in full circle on this LP. However, this time around, I would say this album is more consistently dynamic. Maybe not as patience testing as their past work, but still very atmospheric. And I would also say more dramatic in their post-rock performances. Not to say they've ever lacked anything in that department before, but with the more layered guitars and synths, it truly makes for a more expressive, more tangible psychedelic experience. There are points on this album that give you a beautiful euphoric high, but then a very dense, heavy, colossal crash. And there's not really a moment here where, in comparison to other releases, they're not grabbing my attention, as the guitar layerings and embellishments are really used to build emotion, they're really used to build tension. And the vocals have various forms of ferocity. Whether you're getting these growls, these roars, or these blood-curdling, high-pitched, bestial squeals that you hear on Mirror Deep, that I would liken to that of Weakling. And to keep things so engaging and immersive is definitely a feat, especially with how lengthy these tracks are, with ultimately the closer being such a monster at over 16 minutes, which is really not uncommon for Neurosis to put out an album over an hour long, but to do it for so long and with a new lineup, I would say is definitely commendable. And there are certainly more emotional and moodier moments that do work to the album's benefit. So while you do have your pulverizing riffs and drums, you do have your beautiful emotional moments to create a fantastic contrast. The closer on this LP, I would definitely say, is a prime example of that. Also, there's way more density in the bass, more thickness when it comes to the riffs, definitely what you would hear on a doom metal record. And with metal being so innovative as it is, I feel it is important to strike while the iron's hot, which they are doing here, as we got the fantastic run of Death Heaven, Imperial Triumphant, along with Severus, Krallis. There is a lot of competition to creatively keep up with, and Aaron Turner has really not shied away from that. In fact, putting out a fantastic album with More Mother, as she touched on colonialism, systemic racism, all coalescing well with atmospheric sludge metal. Also, I would say this is definitely going to go down as another moment in Aaron Turner's quality streak. In terms of mixing balance, there's really nothing too overpowering here. I would say the vocals are on even playing ground with the audio, and there's nothing really here that sticks out in an unflattering way. Maybe Seethed and Scattered, which does have an awkward collaboration in terms of vocals. where there is gruffness in the vocals, sure, but it seems like the less dense and less heavy vocals have more presence in opposed to the more aggressive vocals, which sound a little more drowned out. As Aaron brings these more inhumane, gargantuan growls, that I would say, like, there really needs to be a great contrast between the two. And they keep it mostly engaging at 8 tracks. And I would say mostly this is a consistent, solid fire track list. The tracks are mostly multifaceted, and they have their chaotic moments, but they also have their dystopian, eerie moments as well. But there's also gorgeous moments as well too that flow together seamlessly, and each offering a myriad of identities, but simultaneously coalescing together, not making anything awkward, not making anything into an awkward transition, all while avoiding being one-dimensional and conveying different stages, like on the track Blind, which features some solemn passages with its meditative, somber guitar leads in unison with the vocals, with these sour chords, chaotic drum fills, absolutely reversed and warped keys. The song Mirror Deep, as I mentioned before, has these walls of dissonant guitar grooves, with these call and response vocals that go from absolutely monstrous to shouted and aggressive. That leads into this curious yet serene synth passage, but then explodes into this chaotic, monstrous pit of destruction that has so many layers of anarchy, where the guitars are blaring, there's screeching tones in the background. It really gives you this feeling of nonstop insanity, along with the squawking guitars, where it sounds like they're yelling, "Shut up, shut up," which honestly sounds, I know this is going to sound silly, kind of calls like a callback to Linkin Park's Hybrid Theory with the song One Step Closer to the Edge. It's pretty unintelligible, but still works in tandem with the guitars. And while these vocals are quite memorable, they are still very aggressive, they are still very harrowing. And yes, there are beautiful moments, as I mentioned before, but then take on moments that I could only describe as insanely transitional. That starts off with this very rapid, pulsating beat over this bed of ambient synth drones that does draw back to Suicide's Frankie Teardrop. Yes, it's a band. Don't demonetize me. That explodes at the 2-minute and 30-second mark with these heavy guitars, growled, pained vocals that remind me of Pantera. Yeah, fuck that guy, you could look him up. And then evolve at the 5-minute and 30 mark into these blissful set of drones that are backed by these distorted chords, but with dreamy leads. And it all culminates into a layering of a beautiful guitar passage that sounds so inspirational, it's almost like living in a dream. And it's not like these transitions happen abruptly or change in a very sloppy way. These changes are actually very smooth, they're very gradual, but they don't sound sanitary, they don't sound so touched up. It's just, this band is just working in such a flow and tandem that is just excellent and works so well. Where at the 8-minute and 30-second mark, we get this isolated break, and with the lead sounding very haunting and the backing vocals sounding very angelic, it definitely sounds very Swans inspired, very Michael Gira coded, that occasionally appear on this album and turns into a very dense fever dream. And there's even tribal moments here that again call back to A Sun That Never Sets. This time, however, they are using more Middle Eastern inclusions, like maybe a woodwind, I'm not sure, but the whole thing just sounds like a nightmare that just ebb and flows. That goes from melodic nocturnal harmony to hellish, absolutely destructive, annihilating passages. And the whole thing ends off on a very dissonant, unsettling note. And look, I could go on and on about this, but it does have an incredible ending, but I got more tracks to cover. And the song First Red Rays is another monster of a track that has some of the most sickening layering on the entire record. These heavy circle pit inciting riffs. Not only that, but the embedded, distorted synths just make the whole thing sound like a futuristic mosh pit. And 3 minutes in, we get this serene and honestly the most gorgeous, ethereal guitar passage on the whole entire record, with these weeping guitars, the right amount of distortion, but the perfect amount to create balance, not throw the whole thing off, where eventually we get these larger than life walls of guitars that erupt perfectly over these otherworldly squelching synths. That follows beautifully into the track Untethered, which is honestly the shortest track here. That probably has the most disorienting guitar effects here, and I believe to be reverse maracas. There's a lot of sound effects on this album, which I could go over until I'm blue in the face, but you would have to check that out for yourself. But the point is, they sound incredible. And yeah, there's a lot here that I can't quite put my finger on to what they are, but I can tell you they are embedded perfectly and create a lot of character and personality to each track. And there's also these doomy drones that create this Sabbath-like melody. And there's also Waiting Hours, twangy guitar intro with these swelling ghostly keys, or maybe they're strings, and they're hanging in the background, and there's something about them that just come off so, in a tasteful way, by storm coated. Like, I honestly could hear Richie just hopping on this thing, but also features some very searing guitar swells that eventually leads into this incredibly psychedelic backing melody. And it's pretty clear that even with a lineup change, these guys could still pull off an incredibly creative record. And this time, I would say, as someone who's listened to so much Neurosis, listened to almost every album they've put out, this may be their best one. And again, this is coming from someone who is very versed in their catalog, because it's super well-rounded with its ambience, mesmerizing and equally annihilating. It really has captured a whole new identity, but still maintains its grit. And the melodic additions have not watered down their ominous, sinister personality. And overall, I love this record. I don't have too many complaints. I really think this is an excellent return. I think this is very uniquely and sequentially put together. And as you listen more and more, as I listen more and more, there is definitely a lot more to dig into. Were there moments here that were a little awkward? Yes, but it still kept me engaged. Like, I don't think there was really a terrible, god-awful moment here. Like, the riffs were heavy as hell. The melodic moments were blissful and euphoric. There was versatility, but still aggression and expression in the vocals. And definitely a great change of pace, and I'm really excited to what's in store for the band next. And yes, there are moments where they're reheating their own nachos, but while reheating their own nachos, they are adding different flavors and different seasonings before reheating them to keep it fresh. And certainly another milestone in their atmospheric sludge metal catalog and atmospheric sludge metal in general. I'm feeling a 4.5 out of 5 on this album. If you've given this a listen, what did you think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And that's it. Hit me with a sub. Show me love. This is my opinion. If you hate it, your view is still a dub. Critical plug, Neurosis, Undying Love for a Burning World. Till we meet again.